Embroidering on tulle is easier than you think, although it's sheer and see-through, just like this wedding dress. The sleeves have been completely embroidered, and they look fabulous when on, so I'm going to show you some tips for this. This fabric, which is tulle, is completely see-through. This is the white one, and it has a little stretch, so it's very dainty. The other bad thing is that sometimes it can tear easy, so you have to see how that can just get icky? All right, then we have a piece of black here. I chose to use black for this sample, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better, but it's still very see-through. It usually stretches one way, so you have to be very careful with it, but once you learn how to manage it, it's great. So what if you want to just do sleeves, just like the dress I'm wearing? I just wanted to do the sleeves, and I wanted both sleeves to be the same, the right and the left, but just mirror images. So this is one way. If you look closely at this netting, this is the white piece, I have pink thread through here. And what I've done is I've taken the pattern, I laid it out, and I hand stitched around it, just basting stitches to give me an idea of what size this sleeve is going to be. This pink line down the center, which if I pull it a little tight like that, that's the grain line, which is very important to keep that while you're embroidering. So that's one idea for this. Another idea would be to take, there's two different stabilizers I use for tulle. Sticky back, water soluble, and water soluble. This is the sticky back. So if I peel this back, I could put something on here that maybe I couldn't hoop. For example, this is the front bodice piece of a little vest. You can barely see the outline image, and maybe I want to embroider right up here. So I would just lay this down. Now here's the tricky part. You have to make sure that the fabric, or the tulle, whatever you want to call it, does not get skewed. You don't want it to be bent like this at all. You want it to be able to lay nice and flat, not stretched out. So it takes a few minutes to lay it down, but then you're going to mark the placement of where you want your design, and you're good to go. One warning about this sticky back water stabilizer is every once in a while, because this tulle is so thin, if you're using a metallic thread, it will break the thread. So if you're going to use sticky back, don't use that metallic thread with the tulle. You'll just get a headache. But if you do, just embroider slowly and you're fine. I love that stuff, by the way. You throw it in water and it's gone. So this is the one we're going to do. This is, I chose a larger hoop, water soluble. Now this does not stick at all. This is just water soluble. This time, I'm just going to use my sleeve pattern as a base. Lay this out. And I have found this to be the most successful way of doing embroidery on tulle, where I'm actually hooping it. Now remember, the tulle can rip, so you have to be very careful, but I'm basically going to pull this very tight. Kind of lay it like this. Now I have a very large piece of tulle here, so I can align my sleeve and know where it's going to be when I'm finished here. But just get that super tight. If it's not tight enough, you're going to end up with wrinkles. And I'm going to show you some bad examples in just a moment here. Okay, this is perfect. So here's my sleeve. I'm just going to check the placement. That'll be fine. And I'll show you how to cut that later. So let's just go to the embroidery machine. Slide that in. When you're choosing a design, it really doesn't matter how dense it is, because on the wedding gown I used everything from very loose to very tight. But if you're using sticky back, make sure it's not too tight, or like I mentioned, your thread will break. So you have the option of moving things around. I'm going to move this right to the top. And that's where I know that that will be on my next side, so I can just do the mirror image. And the last thing I'm going to do is change it to one color. And then we should be good to go. I'm just going to make sure it starts okay. Everything looks real nice and tight here. And it looks great. I'm going to show you some bad examples. Excuse these for being a little bit wrinkly. But the problem is that if I were to press these, the water soluble will disappear. One more thing, don't go too far from your sewing machine, because if it stops on this tulle, or if the fabric happens to fold over, you have to stop immediately or you have to start over. So here's one sample. This is the sticky back. I laid the tulle on top, similar to how I wanted the sleeve done. This is very similar to the one that I have on. But if you look closely, as this went, see if you can see these. Can you see all this wrinkled tulle here? That was because I did not have the fabric stuck down good enough. So, I mean, it was like it would come up a little bit, so when it started to embroider, it started to pull the fabric. So that's why I like the hooping better, but maybe your design is smaller. So the trick to that is to stay close to it and make sure the fabric is down really good. The tulle is against that, really good. So that's one bad one. Then we have, this is very similar, the opposite side of this jacket, which I decided to stop right then. I got up and walked away, and this part here pulled away from here, and you can see the wrinkles. Now, when I wash that away, would it work? Yes, but it would still have those wrinkles. So that's another thing to be wary of. And this one is just the water soluble, and I just sprayed it and stuck it down. Well, it wasn't enough, so that's another no-no. Then we have one here. This one, I stopped right away. I walked away to grab a cup of coffee, and look what happened. It folded the tulle over. So the moral of the story is this fabric is very tricky, so stay close to the sewing machine, keep an eye, make sure it's looking good and not puckering. Now, if you end up with some small wrinkles like this, that's okay, because once you put this in the water, it's gonna disappear, and you're gonna be fine. It's when it actually folds the fabric over and makes a mess. So don't be too particular, but after you try it a couple times, you'll know. And here we go. Here is one that I finished embroidering. Again, it's very wrinkled because it came out of my suitcase. But when it came off of the embroidery hoop, it looked great. This is the top, this is the bottom, however way you want it. This is going to be one sleeve, and I have another one that looks exactly the same. So since this one I did not use the thread to mark my pattern, what I want to do is fold back the grain line on my pattern. And sometimes I'll chalk that in on the fabric to make it easier to see, but I know that this is the center and that's the center. And if your embroidery machine has the option where you can scan in your fabric as you're embroidering, it's so easy to line these up. Okay? And we're gonna open it, close it like this. I want this to be a little higher. So let me just fold this back. This is gonna be my sleeve. And if you notice on the sleeve I'm wearing, there was no need to hem it. The fabric doesn't fray. Lay this down, and I'm just going to cut. This is just a rotary cutter, which is a very, very easy way to do this. There we go. Let me just see. I'm just taking a little bit off this. See how easy that is to cut? Now I'll take the time, go around, mark my notches, and then on my sleeve, I'm gonna put it in water. It's gonna go away. I'll let it dry, and I'm ready to sew it together. That embroidery is turning out great, and don't forget you can pick many different designs. It doesn't matter on tulle.